Let's talk about central bank digital currencies because the last time you were on, we took a deep dive there. I mean, of the 195 countries in the world, right now, 130 are looking towards building their own central bank digital currency. Um, I want to know your thoughts. I mean, because a lot has happened, like I said, from the last time you were on till now with the Fed Now program, et cetera. The BRICS launch, talks of launching a competing currency to the U.S. dollar, et cetera. If you have any new thoughts surrounding central bank digital currencies, and also want to add back home in the U.S. that the Federal Reserve's Michael Barr recently said that the central bank is a long way from any decision on whether it would issue its own digital currency. So I guess the first question is, do you believe that?
Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's coming. I don't think they're a long way. I think it's coming. I mean, the BIS said that by 2025, everyone needs to have an operational CBDC. And if you look if you take the entire gross domestic product of the world, the countries that comprise, to your point, 95% of the GDP globally already have one that in production, or they are beta testing, or they are building the central bank digital currency. I think it's interesting to note that the number two financial or economic advisor to the Biden administration, Lael Brainerd, who spent time at the Treasury and the Fed, who ran point on Fed Now, is a modern monetary theorist. She was involved in dealing, when at the Fed, dealing with MIT in the production of the CBDC. Biden signed an executive order to fast track the CBDC. And, so yes, I do think ultimately that it is coming. And this is what has kind of led me down this pathway that I think I'm a little bit I almost have to stop myself, because I have been saying things that I don't normally say. I mean, I guess, let me indulge me, if you will.
Please, yeah.
So let's take a step back. When we talk about the things that the U.S. has done, and I'll get to this point because I think it bears at least thought process for people out there. I am not a conspiratorialist at all. I think I'm a realist. I try to look at both sides of the equation. But when people look at what's happening in this country, and I think they have to question, is justice being passed out equally? Is it being administered equally? Are we the country that we once were? The fraying of the unity of this country, where, after World War II and the Great Depression, we were a unified country. We were able to stand together and build a great country. We're not unified anymore. It's black and white and red and blue and vax and no vax and rich and poor, and we're very, very much just not the same country we once were. Now, what I'm getting at is simply this. I ask you, could this possibly be intended? Could they possibly be trying to create an event? And this is what I've talked about for a very long time without really saying it. When we push away Saudi Arabia, we create divisiveness in this country, we weaponize the dollar, we're doing everything we can to create an environment where you see this coalition of countries pushing back against the West, even our allies like France, pushing back, and all of a sudden sides are being drawn. And what happens? What happens if Saudi Arabia and OPEC at that moment say we're no longer taking dollars and the dollar gets dumped? The banking system, remember, Lael Brainerd is a modern monetary theorist who wants to get rid of the banks, wants to cull them. Look at what's happening with the banks. The aiding and abetting of the money leaving the regional banks to the big commercial banks by the Fed, because they're allowing the money market funds to invest in the overnight reverse repo market at 5.3% with daily liquidity. There's no reason to stay in these fractured regional banks. You see this event, or whatever event it is, that creates this chaos where the banks fail and they will be bailed in, not bailed out. Bailed in. That's what the Dodd-Frank law said. They must be bailed in. Everyone will lose everything over $250,000. It goes into the pot to bail in the bank. The dollar gets dumped globally because it's no longer the sole settlement currency for oil. At some point, that's that all-at-once moment. You go over the falls, or the Jenga tower falls. Hey, thanks, you guys are going green. You signed an executive order. You don't need us anymore. So we've signed up with the BRICS, and we're going to sell oil in other currencies, and the dollar gets dumped globally because every country's had to hold it for 50 years to buy oil, and now it creates a tsunami of inflation. Interest rates spike, the banks collapse, everything collapsed. Why? Because how the hell else, Daniela, do you get everyone who watches your show who said, I'm not taking a CBDC, not a chance in hell? Well, guess what? The $155 trillion in debt that the U.S. has, $32 trillion on balance sheet, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions, $120 trillion, that's owed to the American public, mostly. And as China and Japan and Saudi Arabia dump treasuries, who's buying them all? The American public. So if you create an event, purposely, knowingly, you push away Saudi Arabia, you create this event where the dollar, we're not clinging to the privilege of the world reserve currency, just like the #1 economic advisor in this country would like. Instead, we are incentivizing de-dollarization and ultimately that moment where there's an event created, where, by the government's own admission, we have $5 trillion in assets backing $155 trillion in debt. The largest asset, 40% of our assets are student debt. What I'm getting at is you create an event because you'll never pay that debt off, ever. There's no way you can pay that off without completely getting rid of entitlements and stop spending and do all of these things that won't work in this country. So you create an event, you have a villain. Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC, how could they have done this to us? They dumped the dollars, look what they've done, and bang, everything collapses. And everything collapses at the exact same time. Stocks, bonds, real estate, the dollar, pensions, 401ks, the banks, everything. But have no fear, because Lael Brainerd is here, and she's a modern monetary theorist who ran Point for Fed now, has been dealing with the CBDC with MIT, and all you need to do is sign on the dotted line and we'll make you whole. In other words, what I'm getting at is, could this have all been thought out? How else do you reset? How else do you find a villain to blame for the collapsing of the system that allows you to default and start over and allows the American people to be made whole by signing on to a modern monetary theorist's dream of a central bank digital currency? Sign on the dotted line, we make you whole. So I guess all I'm saying is this. I do believe it's going to happen. And I think there'll be a tremendous amount of pushback for those who would otherwise willingly take it. But what if there was an event that put everyone at the same place where you have no choice to take it or to be broke, to be busted, to be screwed? So yeah, I think there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality, and I check myself when I say this, but the more I think about it, and the more you look at the two people who are the #1 and 2 advisors to this country, one wants to get rid of the banks and go modern monetary theory, central bank currency, and one wants to shed the world reserve currency. You couldn't draw it up any better in a Hollywood script to what's happening if that's indeed what you wanted to do.
Oh. Andy, I want to thank you. I really want to thank you for that, for that incredible summation of helping us connect the dots. And of course, you and I, we don't know the answer, but it's so important, I believe, to think about this, because my concern, Andy, when I speak to people who are not watching this show or other shows like this, is that I'm so afraid they're just going to sign on that dotted line, that they're not thinking about this, right? And unfortunately, I believe that is the majority. And I know it takes a minority to make a change, but unfortunately, I don't know if the majority are thinking about this, Andy.
Well, and I think most people wouldn't want to take it because of the perception of erosion of privacy and all of these things. You take a look at all the patents Bill Gates has and all the big money that's developed programs that, like the ID 2020, where this enhanced ID, where everyone, Bill Gates has patents that connect your medical records and your ability to your bank records to this ID. I mean, all of these things are put into place, and you can see little by little how these things are happening. And, I guess I've learned one thing, Daniela, over the years, that there is a fine line between conspiracy and reality. I think most of us have a hard time believing, could these things really be intended? But ask yourself, How do you pay off 155 trillion in debt? Daniela, a trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years
I
ago.
know it's mind-boggling. Well, that's why you need higher inflation.
Right.
Okay?
Well, that's exactly right. And what better way to get real inflation than to see the world dump dollars? And the better part about it, and when this all came to me, is when Biden said it's Putin's inflation. No, it's not. Inflation is always a monetary event. It is an increase in the money supply. And more money was printed in 4 years than in the history of the country preceding it, while stepping on interest rates, creating the distortions.
Yeah.
So when he said it's Putin's inflation, I said they're looking for a villain. So what better way to reset the system than to tell Saudi Arabia we don't need you anymore, and to weaponize the dollar, making everyone think, are we next? And allowing this formation of countries that is incredibly formidable, that controls the majority of all of the commodities in the world. And when they say we're going a different direction and everything collapses because everyone who's had to, in the whole world, they've all had to stockpile dollars to buy oil. If they dump dollars simultaneously at some point, and not too soon to cut off their nose to spite their face, as we talked about a few minutes ago, but now you have a villain. And that villain did this to us, a rallying cry for everyone who just got whacked to sign on to the new system, the new CBDC. Here's your great reset. And could it be? I don't know. But think about it for a moment, and I think it starts to become plausible. And I don't see any other explanation other than our politicians are completely idiotic. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe they just don't see beyond their own face. But as far as I'm concerned, either they're completely nefarious and plotting, or they're just stupid, one or the other.
Let's talk about
Shalom, 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 shalom. As always, first I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kodash. Yahweh is the name of the Most High. Yahweh Shai is the name of the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone, our teachers and our leaders in the spiritual warfare in these bodies of ours. These mortal bodies of ours, and shalom to the hopeful elect brothers and sisters who are woken up to the truth of the scriptures of the Bible, who we are, the true children of Israel, who the nations are, and the end time Bible prophecies, from the war of Armageddon to the mark of the beast, to the second coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Peace be unto you, brothers and sisters of the hopeful elect. So anyway, as we always do, we like to touch on when we hear these different presenters, and these different shows and hosts, when they speak about things that are Bible prophecy, biblical, that we know is biblical. So when we hear, I forget his name, talking to Daniela Carbone, because that's the lady's name. She's Italian. I believe she's an Israelite as well. She's Carbone. She's an Italian. But she's got the spirit of an Israelite, that woman, Danielle Carbone, because I tell you what, she sees so she understands what's really happening more than most people out there, you know. So we do read into these shows and read into what they're saying, but we're able to go into the Bible to be able to pull out these prophecies to make you understand what he is referring to when he's talking about the event, the great event. The great event is going to usher in the mark of the beast, the microchip, which is going to come from the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. The great event, the event that they're going to bring some type, and I've always said this, they're going to create some type of 9/11 event to usher in the mark of the beast. Some type of 9/11 event, but the foundations for the mark is the central bank digital currency, is that all countries' currencies are going to go digital. That's the foundation. That's the underlining thing that's going to allow them to bring in the microchip. The microchip is going to be the end game for these elites, basically. So, you know, what he was speaking on about is this event, they're going to create some type of event, either from out of this war that's happening or some type of event that's going to cause the whole system to collapse. And I've always said this, I've always told you this, that these elites, right? The elites of Esau are going to create some type of 9/11 event that's going to bring the whole system crashing down. And it's going to start with the collapse of the US dollar. And for everyone that's holding a US dollar is going to become worthless. And then all money is going to switch over to the new digital system, to the central bank digital currency. The government is going to take over the whole banking system. It's going to be a global affair. It's going to be a global affair because it's going to start in Babylon the Great. But all of these Western allies are going to adopt the exact same system because all of them are holding US dollars in their reserves. They're using the US dollar to pay for goods on the international market. That's why it's called the world reserve currency. So this is what they're doing. They're using the US dollar to pay for goods on the international market, right? So they're all going to get caught holding the bag. That's what I call it, boy, holding the bag. When you're holding the bag, boy, the dollar has been the world's principal reserve currency since the end of World War II and is the most widely used currency for international trade. That's what you must understand. High global demand for dollars allows the United States to borrow money at the lowest cost and to use its currency as a tool of diplomacy and war. So that comes with loads of drawbacks, and we're going to see that drawback happen. And like I said to you, everything he was telling you, boy, but I know they're going to create some type of event. These devils are going to create some type of event. So what I want to do, and he was talking about this bank here, because these are the BIS, the Bank of International Settlement. These are one of the major players that's going to be a major part in this digital currency. That's what they are. See, international banks deposit funding rotated from non-financial sectors to non-bank financial institutions. This is what they do. This is what the BIS. The BIS is a major player in what's coming. We'll see if there's any news on this headlines today. Hearing of Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs of the European Parliament. Monetary policy in the euro area. Where do we stand? Monetary policy in the euro area. Was it too late or could it now be too much? Yeah, generative AI applicable to labor market and choice behavior. I'm just seeing if there's anything that kind of stands out. So these are all central bank speeches that we're looking at. Okay. That recently speeches by the different central banks around the world. Okay. But anyway, these guys, these are major players alongside the IMF and the World Bank. So I want to go to, let's bring out a couple of scriptures. I just really wanted to bring that bulletin to you on what Daniela Carbone was speaking on with her. I forget the guy's name that she was speaking to. He's an economist and he knows exactly what's going on. And like I said, boy, when all hell breaks loose, when this event takes place, we're going to need defense against our enemies. Who's our main enemies? Are the Edomites, the elites of Esau, the elites of Esau, of the Edomites. What are the Edomites? Your Edomites are what we know today as your Europeans, the actual Europeans that go back to the seed of Esau. All right? That's what we're talking about. The elites of Esau. These are the main players. These are the guys that sit at the head. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the they call the JP Morgans, I forget. There's quite a few. There's 13 families that sit on the main table of the elites. All right, you've got 13 families that control the world. All right, as we refer to them as the sorry. We refer to them as the Illuminati. All right. I think the other names of the other families are. You've got, and there's a bloodline between them all. Just so you understand, they all have a bloodline between them. All right. They all go back to the Rothschild. The Rockefellers go back to the Rothschilds. All right. They're all part of the central bank. Some saying there's an attempt to restore. See, they're looking to restore balance in the world, this new world order, their own type of balance, right? And it was formed, and the elites, and these new world orders have been formed by America and Europe's most elite families and wealthy families. So they're like a powerhouse that formed 13 families, and they're known to be the controlling practically everything on the globe, in which they do, from political parties around the world to courthouses to educational institutions to natural resources to foreign policies to food. national economies, media houses, even terrorist organizations. These guys control these elite families, right? And they're the ones who decide where and when the next terror attack is going to happen. This is why I said that when he talked about he was speaking about the event, this major event that's going to take place, right? That's what he was speaking about. These are your enemies, those 13 families, right? This major event that he's talking about that's going to take place. So these 13 families are the ones who decide where and when the next terror attack is going to happen. They also decide when the markets will fall. They decide when the government needs to take over. They decide what happens at the UN. They decide practically everything. And then you've got the US and the UK government's relentless backing of the global spread of genetically modified seeds was in fact an implementation of decades of long policy of the Rockefeller Foundation since the 1930s, when it funded the Nazi eugenics research, because the Rockefeller Foundation funded the Nazi eugenics research, i.e. mass-scale population reduction and control of darker-skinned races by an Anglo-Saxon white elite, which are the Edomites, right? And as some of these circles saw it, right, war as and some of them in these circles, these elite families saw it, saw war as a means of population reduction was costly but not that efficient. But this is what they were going to do. So this is what you must understand. Modern day democracy, like the way we know it, is not more than 250 years old. The world as we know it has always been ruled by the ones with absolute power, those who knew how to control wealth and resources, but those who knew how to control their people by hook or by crook. So the New World Order aims to work on a similar philosophy of absolute power and control, but on a global scale. The plan is to secretly have a single body governing the planet, with the elite sitting right at the top of the food chain. This is where the CBDC comes in, right? Leaving the rest of the world to fight it out for that 1% of the global economy. And this is why I said everything's going to change up. There's some type of event that's going to take place. And scarier is the fact that they apparently also want to keep control of the global population. They want the global population to be just under 1 billion. That's what you must understand. Leaving the earth resources for their own exclusive use, right? And to keep the population in check, they are willing to go to any extent, even plan scientifically engineered global population control methods like C19 and its so-called cure for the C19 that they want to give you, the jab that they want to give you, genetically modified food, right? And it's also said that these families even hold the cure for terminal diseases like cancer and AIDS, but they don't want to release it to the public because then there'll be a cure, right? And the cure is not good for the pharma business, as we know. J.D. Rockefeller, he set up one of the first investment management businesses in the 19th century, around 1882, right? So the master planners devised the strategy of a great merger among the nations. But before such merger can be consummated, the United States becomes just another province in the New World Order. Because that's all America is. It's just another province in the New World Order. So there must at least be a semblance of parity among the senior partners in the deal. So how does one make the nations of the world more nearly equal? The insiders are determined that two-pronged approach was needed. This is what they determined. Use American money and know-how to build up your competitors, while at the same time use every devious strategy you can devise to weaken and impoverish this country. This is why the Native American Indians said that they talk with a forked tongue. This is what they do, right? So the goal is not to bankrupt the United States, rather is to reduce our productive might, and therefore our standard of living to the meager subsistence. I can't pronounce the word. To a meager subsistence level of socialized nations of the world. So the plan is not to bring the standard of living in less developed countries up to our level, but to bring ours in the West, so-called West, like America, Australia, Europe, England, France, Germany, is to bring ours down to meet theirs coming up. So it's like your standard of living, which must be sacrificed on the altar of the New World Order, and that's what they're going to do. So I'm trying to think the 13th thing. You got the Asta bloodline. I mean, these guys are rich, right? They make the people like the what's his name, the Ambani and the Gates look like peasant. Bill Gates and the Ambardis and the Warren Buffetts look like peasants. These guys, these 13 families. So you've got the Rockefeller. You've got the Rothschild family. You've got the Astor bloodline. You've got the Bundy bloodline. You've got the DuPont, DuPont family. Kennedys are part of them as well. All right. You've got some say the Lee family, like they're like an Asian family bloodline, are part of them, because these families are all connected bloodline. The Onassis family, if you remember him, he was a great shipping billionaire merchant, right? The Rockefellers, as we said. Is it the I forget, is it the Van Dyke or the Van Dyne family? The Vanderbilts and the Rothschilds. There's this, I think that's the 13. There may be more. I may not remember all of them, but that's what I can remember. So true or not, the whole concept, right? This is what they say, right? Listen, man. These guys know what they're getting ready for. All right. So anyway, let's just bring out this scripture what I had up here. I just really want to just kind of just speak a little bit on what is truly happening. So we have to pray to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai to defend us from our enemies. And I just read out who your main enemies are. They control all of these central banks. All of these central banks around the world are controlled by those 13 families. All right. So, so what I'm saying is that those 13 families are your main enemies. These elites, Esau, Edom, the Edomites, these are your main enemies. And those governments that they're in, they're just puppet. The real puppeteers are behind the scene. So we have to pray. Hear my prayer, O Yahweh. Give ear to the words of my mouth. For strangers have risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. So that's their ultimate end game. That's why they want to introduce the microchip, because the microchip, once you take the microchip, then you've lost your soul to these devils. What the Bible says, all right, about the microchip. Right? They want your soul, all right? Once you give the microchip, it's an end game for you, right? They want your soul. That's why the scripture says here, doom for the worshippers of the beast. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast is who? The European Union and NATO. And his image is his whole system that the New World Order have in place are coming to their completion, and that those 13 families control. And receive his mark. The word mark in the Greek, there's charagma, which is the microchip in his forehead. The Neuralink, we already see Elon Musk pushing the Neuralink. They're doing human test trials, or in his hand, right? It's the microchip. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into a cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone, which is the nuclear fallout, the nuclear war. The majority of them are going to perish in the war of Armageddon, World War III, in the presence of the holy angels, and then the rest of them are going to perish in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, because Yahweh Shai and the angels, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, he's the Lamb, Yahweh Shai. He's coming with the holy angels. Michael is the chief archangel. He's coming in the midst of World War III, in the middle of World War III, to deliver the elect of Israel from the 12 tribes of Israel that are scattered amongst the nations. Only the elect. Many are called, few are chosen. The word chosen means eklektos in the Greek, which means the elect, from the destruction out of Babylon the Great, America, and anywhere else where there might be a nuclear missiles fired upon around the world, to deliver the elect. Then the Lord and the angels are going to take down the Most High's enemies, which are those 13 elite families who control the world. So all of the armies and governments and institutions that they control, the Lord and the angels is coming to subdue them all. All right, that's what you understand. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. The smoke is coming from the nuclear destruction. As we all know, Babylon the Great, the United States of America, is going to become a human altar. It's going to be totally destroyed by nuclear fire and the chariots of the Lord, the holy angels, and the Lord, the Lamb, Yahweh Shai. And And they have no rest day or night, because no one knows how long America's going to be on fire for after the nuclear destruction that's going to begin with the Russians and their allies. And then in the midst of that war, the Lord, Yahushua, the Lamb, and the holy angels are going to come to deliver the chosen of Israel out of America, from the 12 tribes, right? To deliver them, and then they're going to complete the destruction of America. That's why it says they have no rest day or night who worship the beast. The beast is NATO and the European Union, right? The head of NATO is America, Babylon the Great. And his image is his whole system. Democrat, Republic, Labour, Conservative, left, right. Goes back to the Roman times. The plebeians and the patricians, the two-party system that they've pushed upon the whole world. They call it democracy. And whosoever receives the mark of his name, the mark is what? Is the microchip. That's the end game for those that take the mark. But this new CBDC digital system is going to be the foundation for the introduction of the mark. But like the man was saying, these elite families of the New World Order are going to create some type of event, major type of 9/11 event. So go back to Psalms 54. For strangers, these elite families, right, are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. How do they want your soul? Because they're going to want you, just like what Daniel Carbone said. She said that the majority of the people are going to sign up for this CBDC. Basically, they're going to sign up for the microchip, because the CBDC is just the foundation for the microchip. So she said the majority of the world is just going to go willy-willy along with it, because they don't know what's going on. Daniela Carbone, and the guy channeling the show, they understand what's going on. They may not know it's all Bible prophecy, what's happening, but they understand what's going on with the New World Order and this system that these Edomites, right, the elites of Esau, are getting ready to introduce. For strangers have risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set the Most High before them. They don't believe in the Most High. Those 13 families that I spoke about, they don't believe in the Most High, right? The Vanderbilts, the Russell family, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Onassis family, the Kennedys, the Collins, the Bundy, the DuPonts, the Astor family. They don't believe in the Most High. These are demons. These are people that are worshiping the devil, worshiping Satan, and doing all sorts of blood sacrifices. But they understand, they truly understand that there is a power more powerful than them. They're not under any illusion what's going on. They do understand, because these are the most educated people on the planet Earth. All right, just so you understand. So it says, behold, the Most High is mine helper. He's our helper. We got to turn to Yahushua, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, right? Because we can't deal with the Most High Yahweh without going through his son, Yahushua. He is the intercessor between us and the Most High. He is the mediator. Let's get it out. He's the mediator. That's how I spell it. He is the mediator. For there is one Most High, Yahweh. That's the Most High God, Yahweh. All right? One. And one mediator between Yahweh and men. Who is that? That's that man, Yahushua HaMashiach. All right? Who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, or Christ to Jesus. He's the mediator between us and the Most High, Yahweh. They're not the same entity. They are two separate spirits, two separate beings, two separate entities, Yahushua. But they both are reading from the same script, singing from the same hymn sheet. But they are two physical and spiritual separate entities. Just so you understand. So let's go back to Psalms 54. It says, behold, the Most High is my helper. The Lord, Yahushua, is with them that uphold my soul. He shall reward evil unto mine enemies and cut them off in thy truth. So right now they are being cut off by the truth of the scriptures, but we are prophesying. All right. But he's going to reward evil to them. But they have to fulfill Bible prophecy, meaning these elite families that I just spoke of have to introduce the microchip on a global scale. The CBDC on a global scale, right? They have to bring about the war of Armageddon to fulfill Bible prophecy. Nothing's going to stop these things happening except the Lord is going to come in the midst of the war. But prior to that, there's going to be an event, total chaos, breakdown, the dollar collapse, society collapse, the banks are going to collapse, just like what that man was saying. And the Bible refers to it as the time of Jacob's trouble. All right, Jeremiah chapter 30. I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good. For he, Yahweh, has delivered me out of all trouble. Not these elite families, not the governments, not the central banks, not your governments or your employees, all right? It's the Most High through his son Yahushua is going to deliver us out of all of this trouble that's going to come about the whole world. And mine eye has seen his desire upon mine enemies. So how have we seen the Most High's desire upon our enemies? Through the scriptures. We see all through the scriptures how the Most High is going to come and judge and take down these nations, and all of these elite families, these governments, these institutions, these armies, the Edomites, these nations. We've seen it. We see it all in the scriptures, how the Lord is going to do it, why he's going to do it. We just don't know when, because no one knows the day or the hour. But we know that all of these events are going to lead up to that time. So the Lord said, just like how we know it's when it's winter, starts to get cold, we know we're coming to the winter. When it's autumn, we see the leaves start falling off. We know it's coming into autumn. When it's spring, we see flowers starting to pop up. We know it's coming to spring. When it's summer, we know it's getting warmer out there. We know it's coming to the summer. So we see the events that are taking place in the world. We know we're coming very close to the second coming of our Lord, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. All right, to come and to deliver us and to take down these nations, just so you understand. Remember, the Lord is coming on. I'm going to finish it here. Lord is coming with all of these angels in the chariots. See, the coming of Yahweh Shai. And I saw the heavens open, and behold, a white horse, which is a chariot, what the word ignorantly called UFOs and UAPs. Horse is in reference to power. White is purity, right? So that white horse is a chariot, what they call UFOs and UAPs. And he that sat upon him was faithful and true, and in righteousness he does judge and make war. He's coming to judge and make war, but he can't come until the war of Armageddon is taking place and nuclear missiles are firing through the air. He can't come until the microchip has gone global, and this great event, the collapse of these economies and societies, is in total chaos. So all these events have to be in play. The two main events is the microchip, which is the mark of the beast, and the war of Armageddon, World War III. So he's coming. His eyes was a flame of fire, and his head were many crowns. The many crowns represent all of the governments that he's going to take down. As he takes down a government and a country and a nation, he takes the crown of that government, of that king, of that ruler. That country is now subdued under Yahweh Shai and the angels. And he had a name written no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture, dipped in blood, symbolic, metaphoric language. It means how much blood is going to be shed. His actual vesture, his clothes, is not going to be soaked in blood. This is metaphoric language for the amount of blood that's going to be shed. And his name is called the Word of the Most High, because he's coming in the name of his Father. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon the white horses, which are the angels. The white horses that they're coming in are their own chariots, which they call UFOs and UAP, clothed in fine linen and white and clean. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. The laser beams that's going to be coming out of those chariots, that's the sharp sword. A sword is a weapon of war. That's how he's going to smite these nations, with the angels, right, in their chariots. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. He's coming to rule these nations with a rod of iron, meaning we're going to instill the laws, commandments, and statutes of the Bible. We're going to implement upon all of the nations and all of the people that survived the destruction and the judgment, that are alive after the war and after the Lord and the angels subdue all of the nations. We're going to implement the laws, commandments, and statutes of the Bible upon all of the nations. That's why we're going to rule them with a rod of iron. It's going to take a very long time for these nations to be subdued, to be practicing the laws, commandments, and statutes without breaking them. It's going to be a very long time. That's why it's going to take a rod of iron to do it. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierce of the wrath of the Almighty. The winepress is symbolic language, metaphoric language for the amount of bloodshed. And he has on his vesture, his clothes, and on his thigh a name written, Kings of Kings and Lords of Lords. Right? And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great Almighty Yahweh. What supper is that? Those are all of the dead bodies that are going to be spread all up throughout the Middle East, in particular the Middle East, right? And any other nations where there's going to be mountains of dead bodies. But this is particularly talking about the Middle East, because that's where the war of Armageddon is going to take place, in the Levant, in the Persian Gulf. That ye may eat the flesh of kings. This is what all of these flesh-eating birds are coming, the vultures, the crows, all of those type of birds, the eagle, that ye may eat the flesh of kings and the flesh of captains and the flesh of mighty men, all of the soldiers that are going to die in the war of Armageddon, and the flesh of horses and of them that sit on them. The horses represent their chariots, their vehicles, right? Their cars, their tanks. And the flesh of all the men, both free and bond and small and great. Right? And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together. Who is the beast? NATO, right? The head of NATO is America. The beast is NATO and the European Union. America is the head of NATO. And the kings of the earth, the presidents, the prime ministers, all of the rulers of these countries that are sending their NATO armies to fight against the Lord and the angels. And their armies were gathered together to do what? To make war against him that sat on the horse, against Yahushua, and against his army, against the Lord and his angels. So NATO and all his allies are going to be sent by their leaders, their presidents and their prime ministers to go and fight this war against Yahushua and the angels, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, when they come in the chariots, what the world ignorantly refers to as UFOs and UAPs. They're going to send their F-jets, F-16, their stealth fighters, their tanks, their friggin', land-to-air missiles, their armies. They're all going to come to fight against the Lord. This is when all of the nations are going to come together on earth during the war of Armageddon. They're going to not turn their weapons into. They're going to try to fight against this force that's coming from the heavens. And the Lord and the angels is going to subdue them all and eventually rule them with a rod of iron. But like I said, before this take place, there's going to be some type of great event, like what the man was speaking to, that's going to bring all of these nations down to total chaos, where they're going to have to accept the CBDC, and then it's going to lead them to the microchip, probably coming at the same time on a global scale, the microchip, to manage the digital currency. And then at some point, something's going to happen between Iran and Israel that's going to cause the Russians to come against Israel, because Israel's also going to do something that's going to against the Russians in this thing that they're going to be doing. They're going to come against Israel in the Middle East, as it tells in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and chapter 39. They're going to come and attack Israel, and then America and the NATO allies are going to come to defend Israel. Right? The Bible spells it quite clear at you. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, I won't go to it, and Ezekiel 39 makes it quite clear that the Russians coming, Gog and Magog, and its armies are going to come down upon Israel. America's going to come to defend them, and that's how Babylon the Great gets involved in the war of all wars, the war of Armageddon. So I'm going to leave it there. I enjoyed this one. I want to give all the praises. Like I said, boy, they was on point.
Is because the last time you were on, we took a deep dive there. I mean, of the 195 countries in the world, right now, 130 are looking towards building their own central bank.
There you go. So I'm going to leave it there. Give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahushai, Ba'asham, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone, our teachers and our leaders in this spiritual warfare. Shalom to the hopeful elect brothers and sisters. And I do believe that, like I said, that Daniel Carbone, I do believe, right, that she's a Jake, that she's an Israelite. I do believe that she's part of the hopeful elect, that woman, Daniel Carbone. I do truly believe that she is part of the elect, because if you watch her shows, she has some very good shows. She may not know that a lot of the stuff that she talks about is Bible prophecy, but believe me, when it comes to what's going on with the New World Order, the secular world, the banks, the institutions, what's coming, the collapse, the destruction, the willful destruction of society that they're doing, she's 100% on point, let me tell you. So As I say again, all praise and glory to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushua, Bashem, Bakar, Kodesh. Shalom.